Hello guys, and welcome to World Warfare and Economics. This is a geopolitical game set in modern day, entering the stage of a genre currently dominated by the likes of, I suppose, the Superpower series and Geopolitical Simulator series. It is in early access on Steam right now, and today I'm going to be doing a first look, looking at what this game is, trying to discover it, and seeing what kind of shape it's in. As a disclosure, this game is sponsored by the developers Okron Studio. They asked me to make a video about this game. They didn't have any specific ideas in mind, and they accepted my idea of a first look, taking a look at the game, as I too am curious what we're dealing with here. In its current state, we don't have access to any multiplayer or anything. I am pleasantly surprised at the amount of customization, tooltip scale. I would wish there would be some more UI scaling. Hopefully that's something they can add in the future. There's a nice bit of customization for whether you're in America or most other parts of the world. Nice resource usage customization. A surprising amount of graphical settings for a early access game about a map. I actually didn't really expect this much, and I can say, having just booted up the game to make sure it works, it does in fact work. I've experienced no crashes thus far, and as you can see via the helpful FPS counter, I know I'm just on the main menu. Actually, I think I'll leave this open for you guys to see during the video, but the game does run really smooth. I'm enforcing a 120 FPS limit, and it is surprising how smoothly it runs. Right now, there are 3 scenarios to pick from: a China-USA conflict, which has success and failure conditions based on what nation you're playing as, and the same thing with an Israel and Iran conflict situation, where it's America plus Israel, Iran, again, each nation having their own failure and success conditions, in addition to the real simulation scenario, as they call it, where you pick any nation on the map, generally what we would expect from these kinds of games. I will just load up as the United States of America. It gives me a giggle that they list it as a semi-democracy. That is one way to look at a republic for sure. Gives you some bare bones stats about military personnel, GDP. I'm not yet sure of the importance of these stats in the game, but let's go ahead and hit confirm. It asked me to select some settings when I boot this up. There's peace conferences, yet in early access it says it may cause some stability issues, so we'll just leave that on auto-resolve for stability for right now in the current early access state. They have the corona simulation and random pandemics. Honestly, this is part of why I stopped playing geopolitical simulators, so I'm just going to turn that stuff right off. And we can select a difficulty. Interestingly, it starts on realism instead of normal. I'm going to set it to normal because I assume that's the intended way to play. In most games, I assume that's what I'm intended to do. You could even set unlimited resources, which is interesting, meaning there is a limit to resource in the games, I would assume. And we're going to hit confirm, and we'll see what we have once we get in game. All right, we are officially in the game. This is what it looks like, and like I said earlier, very smooth. I zoom all the way out. Sometimes FPS dips a little bit, but otherwise very good performance generally. With my 120 FPS cap, we're getting over 100 FPS basically all the time. So we have all of our countries on the map. We can right click to open information and an interaction menu. Whenever we click on something, we can get specific information on its region. There are seemingly sub-regions within regions with different lines defining them, either dashed or otherwise. Yeah, we could see region 8 versus 14 with different populations. And then there's more macro information over here. So we have micro and macro information that we can go between. The micro information is kind of like over here. You could build bases for different types of military units. Okay. As well as highway infrastructure, railway infrastructure. There's a brief look at available resources in a region here that you can harvest. I guess that goes into the unlimited or not. There's a give independence function, but it's not implemented yet. That would be very nice to have, certainly. And we could build all the different industries here, looking very GPS to me, for sure. But it looks like, and I've done the tutorial for this game, it kind of taught me the basics. The start of every one of these matches, you're gonna have to set a budget. This is, I think, a little confusing at the start, but it is not really tooltip focus, I would say. Instead, you could see right here the current expenses. So this seems to communicate, based on what I've seen, the amount of money that the different industries in general are spending right now, this instant. And I assume this will change with inflation and other things. I can auto set default, and I guess it's gonna match it to our current expenses. And that leaves me a $9 trillion budget with, I don't know what determines the maximum. That hasn't really been communicated to me, but an up to $15 trillion budget that I can then further allocate things into. And as it seems, I need to kind of guess a little bit, I suppose. Essentially, as time goes on, I'm going to need to take money. This is like an intermediate step that's interesting. I'm going to need to figure out what my budget in the long run really is going to be. It's interesting that I can't just allocate my money, but it's seemingly right here up to approval what I'm determining that I'm going to spend for a year. So it kind of has you in advance focus on what you're going to do. So I went ahead here and I raised everything from the defaults, knowing we're going to spend more. All the cheaper things I vastly increased on because, well, it's cheap. The expensive things I focused on health, education, welfare, not as much into entertainment. I gave it some wiggle room to grow. I maxed out our military budget, raised the amount of money we'll have to spend on resources dramatically. I can change this stuff later in the year. It just costs political influence, and I want to not have to spend that if possible. I maxed out our available spending on debt. I didn't put anything into space or others because space isn't implemented in the game yet, and others is about the stock market. I don't think we need that. It shows this will be accepted, so I'm going to confirm all. Oh, we've exceeded our maximum budget. We need to borrow money. I see. Okay, so this is what happens when you go over budget. You have the amount of budget available, and you need to take out debt to go over. So I've gone 9 billion over budget. I did not understand that's how that works. That is understandable. I'll just have to lower, let's say, this research budget a little bit. There you go. So now I just have to wait for that to go through. I unpaused the game for like a day or so, and we have our budget now. There's some nice weather effects that look pretty interesting here. Oh, I can see they are 2D. That's funny. There is diplomacy in this game where you can send envoys to other nations. It looks pretty interesting. I've gotten a pop-up that someone has increased their envoys to me already. Now that I've given myself a research budget, we can actually start researching things. So by default, it shows you everything you can research. We have a total budget we can allocate based on the money that I put in the yearly budget. You can over-invest in research in order to get bonuses. But, like, to get a 300% bonus, you have to spend 10 times the amount. 1.1 billion up to 108 billion is crazy. So, rather, I don't really know what's more effective in the long run, but I assume I would just go and start researching everything available to me for the minimum price. And that adds into the budget that I've allocated right now. This is like for the year. If I don't spend it, then I don't think it actually gets spent. This is more just me saying what I would allow myself to spend, and we can definitely probably change that up. Let me show you that with the political influence. It's a monthly gain of 0.45, and we can use that on certain actions such as that. These are our revenues. I think this means that this is just saying we're losing money. What a surprise. Every nation is operating on debt to some extent. And it looks like I can also go into this dashboard tracker and it'll show me everything I do over a year. Researches, financial deals, arm deals, and other nations can come to me for this stuff, or I can go to them, which is very interesting. You can click on these menus to open a radial. It's interesting that they chose a radial. That makes it seem like they want this game to be accessible on controller. Otherwise, I don't know why it would be a radial. And you can get a lot of information about all sorts of things, not just your GDP, and that's what this one is right now, but I see that you can get a lot of information on your revenues and your economy, and even things regarding your military, wars you're in. Personnel can be allocated into different types, and unfortunately there's no tooltips to teach you what any of these things do, but I have figured out what they do. These are essentially resources. Look at it kind of like an RTS to pump out certain kinds of military units, such as here under manufacturing. these have requirements of certain types of resources, not just these resources listed here, though these are something, I guess, to pay attention to. You need steel, iron, and other things to make these units, gas, and whatever else this other one is. Not only do you need these and money, but you need the right personnel for it as well. So it looks like you need to allocate your infantry, your armor, your engineers, your pilots in order to fit these roles. And it looks like we can increase our recruiting targets, which costs me money, just like in real life. There's a desertion rate. This confused me at first anyway. But this desertion rate just seems to be like, who doesn't sign back up for the military next year? So you need to recruit enough to make up for those that are not re-enlisting, essentially. I'll talk about what I've seen with war real quick because I have tested out a war. So essentially, you pick a military base that you want to deploy to once you select what units you have. There's tooltips. Every unit has stats, and you can take yourself out of real life. The real life context of these units doesn't matter. The stats matter. So you're looking at HP, speed, attack, anti-air, and you're putting all of this into a unit. For example, if I zoom in here, we have these units. I can send them out into the world. I unpause and they start driving around. There's 3 different units here, and I can open up this UI right here to see the different divisions that are here. Again, I wish I could scale up the UI because it's very hard to read these values. You can see the military power at least better here. It's the total sum of their power, 177.89 total. This is not necessarily saying that these are tanks, that this is infantry. Instead, what we're seeing here is that you can reach this power by picking some combination of things here. So for example, here's a good example. So we see here the M11A3s. These are quite fast APCs and M1A1 tanks. They both have attack and anti-air values we could see here. 4.31 and 1.81, they have HP as well. I could combine these units into amounts. For example, let's say I want 100 of these tanks. And interesting, oh, that's interesting. So I just learned now that the numbers activate the speed, and they can activate in this menu as well. So that's something they'll definitely need to adjust. Still, I can control it with values like this. Shift click, control click has values, so that's a nice little workaround for right now. But I could go for, say, 100 of these M1A1s, and it shows you those required personnel. See, these are those resources. That's how I learned these are these resources. I take the APCs as well, take about 100 of them, and you see it's going to require that armor personnel. It's going to require some engineers to go with it. And what it's going to do here is it's going to add up all these attack values and whatnot, and then it's going to combine them. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy that. New Mexico, you see here, it's going to take some time to deploy. So I'm going to just get these guys out of the way, and I'm going to wait for this deploy. All right, so my unit has deployed. It's got 142 military power compared to the 3 different units here, 177. And if I go look at it, I can see, yeah, the land divisions and their exact stats in general. It doesn't have any ranged attack because I didn't put any artillery in it. But I see that's clearly probably important as well. I think this is nice, because it stops the extreme exploiting of like missiles in, say, GPS. It's much closer to superpower, where you're mostly looking at the stats of the units. And it all goes into one easy to micromanage stack that you're not really penalized for using in that manner. And that's kind of nice. I'm pretty appreciative of that. One thing that I know I need for military construction of units is, for example, steel. Now here are all the different types of sectors, you know, very GPS style, all the different sectors that we can interact with, make laws for. There's specific laws for every single one of these. I could ban porn, everybody's favorite. And this has to be passed by Congress because I'm American, and I can also build relevant facilities as well, such as having these internet towers. There's also nursing schools and things of that nature that we can get built. And it's all based upon our budget, what we're able to build. And this is why you kind of want to aim higher in every sector so it can last throughout the year without losing efficiency, I assume, and still leave you room to expand. You can also have things privatized, mixed, or nationalized. To be honest, I don't know what the difference is yet. That's something I guess I'll have to learn over time. But I know that one thing I need is iron. And so this is where we get iron. I can subsidize iron. We could see that we are definitely negative on iron. We're like 80 million short. I can do trade in order to acquire this iron, or I can simply start using it. You could see even what uses resources in general. And you could do this for everything. There's different efficiency rates as well. And so this is where GPS style trade comes in handy and the like. But I can also build dedicated facilities, and I don't have to min-max placing them on the map. Isn't that nice? Instead, I can just select a region that supports it, like Kentucky, like Indiana, and then input an exact amount I want. I can also multiply it by 1, 1,000, 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion, in case I just want to, I don't know, I suppose set it up like that. I don't know if this is like one-to-one production or construction, but if I choose to build 100 of this resource right here, it shows building, I'm not sure what building powers, but it shows me when it will be finished. It looks like that would just be done at the end of the month. That seems pretty nice. Only 15 million to make, and I should be able to just build all of it pretty simply because I've already allocated the money I need for that. And then on that tracker, I can see, as like before, every construction thing, every research that I do is all tracked here, which is quite handy for keeping track of it. And this is a glimpse at some other things. I guess we look at diplomacy next, is the arm deals, the trade deals, which kind of ties into building production in general, and loans. I can go to like any other nation in the entire world and, for example, right-click on them and have all these interactions. I can, for example, send different amounts of envoys if I wish to raise my relationship with someone. I just go ahead and bring that up to 10, for example, and it will increase the rate at which our relationship changes. I can also delete some as well. There are different, as we can see here, here's the different trade deals I can sign. I can try to loan out money to someone. I could try to request money from someone, and I guess their specific conditions and how much they like you will determine how likely they are to accept this by the looks of it. There's this little rating here. It doesn't seem to change very much, but that might just be because the UK doesn't need money. I can just flat out send economic aid as well, which will affect our relationship and just give a flat amount of money to any nation that I want. There's international routes, which will boost tourism and immigration between countries. I'm not really sure what a route is in this context, but it looks like I can get quite a lot of them. And I can just set this for free. They don't even have to really do anything specific about it. I can ask a nation to join an organization that I am in. So we have organizations like NATO. That's pretty nice. I can just flat out insult them with words. Oh, that's funny. I can impose embargoes on certain goods with certain countries, highly specific and visual, so it's not very clunky. That's nice. I can offer specific arm deals, either to sell things directly from my own industry or even to license. Oh wow, this is more customization than I'm used to. I can say, hey, I'll manufacture you some tanks, or I'll just send you some tanks that are already built. It could be a public deal, or we can try to hide the fact that this deal is even happening. Certain amounts. I didn't expect this level of depth. And then we can even, instead of doing arms deals like that, we can have unit licenses, which can essentially allow them to make a certain thing. So I'll say, hey, do you want to make the M1A1 tanks yourself? Pay me for the license. Give me, $1 billion for the license to make this. And then there's intelligence network that it's not letting me click on it for right now, which is strange. I've been able to successfully click it before. Oh, because I don't have one. There's a different menu that lets me set it up. That's right. And then the good old declare war, where I can conquer specific, this needs a typo correction, regions. I can conquer everything. I can try to make someone a puppet. And there's other things here, like I can help them in a war, try to liberate them, transform their regime. And if you have the peace conferences on, then regardless of what you actually set as a goal here, you can modify it and try to reach a deal earlier. I know one thing I tested was an invasion of Mexico as America, and it worked pretty smoothly. I could just kind of send these major stacks to each region and then fight over them. I mean, for example, declare war, like conquer, declare war, yes. And then I could just say, take these units right here, right click them in there. I can also, if I don't want to control this myself, automate. And I did do testing with this on the automation. It does actually work particularly well. And they start fighting. When battles start, you'll be able to get stats about how the battle is going. And if it's red flashing, that means you're losing. Orange flashing, kind of in the middle. Green flashing means you're winning. So right now, we didn't have a lot of men right there. I didn't do any setup, so it's not going too well right now. But then when you're in these wars as well, you can also, and I can go right here, you can send an invitation to a peace conference if you have that enabled. And you can have peace pressure as well from other nations that are interacting with your war. You can interact with other nations as well, giving ultimatums, sending aid. You can even have doctrines of if you're going to like bomb civilians or not, or you want to keep hearts and minds, or you just want to shock and awe, scorched earth. There's a lot of this. You could take refugees from the war. It's all surprisingly in depth. You can see there's a war score system, kind of like a paradox grand strategy game, and a military power rating. And when you get high enough war score, this gives you a lot of leeway where, for example, when I tested this war, I only needed to take to about here, and then I had beaten them up so much that they pretty much just surrendered. I went into the peace conference, I asked them to surrender to me, full annexation, and I got all of Mexico. It was pretty nice. Separately, we have the nice ability to go change our taxes and implement taxes. Every time I do it, it's like a law. These tooltips show things like sickness rate, equality rate, attractiveness. These tooltips are not very well defined. I'd love to see these improved in the future of this early access. You can see the estimated income right now versus if you change it, for example, right here. And one thing I wish it would show me before I did any of this was what the vote is going to look like. I can very quickly cancel it. What I find hysterical and I love is that I could just flat out print money to get a lump sum of money. You can just flat out pay off your debt if you have enough money, but that debt I set earlier is just the annual payment that I can do to try to lower my debt overall. I could set my interest rate to try to control my inflation and stuff. Printing money will hurt my currency strength. There's a tracker of my income, my revenues from different years. There's this weird stock market thing that you can potentially interact with that I haven't interacted with yet because it looks scary. Under military, here's the intelligence where I can set up networks in different nations. I can monitor my own population. Interesting. Cyber infrastructure, this is clearly defense. I could try to dismantle terrorist organizations. Afghan, Taliban, Hamas, and Hezbollah, this is misspelled, are the only ones that are in there. We can see how many soldiers they have, missiles, infrastructures, see what enemies they have. Oh, apparently Hamas and the Afghan Taliban don't like me. They're my enemy, but we're in peace. That's interesting, and they can have conflicts. I can even allocate different types of resources, like special agents, spies, hackers, and recon aircrafts down here. It's a lot of information to take in all at once, I think. One thing I'd love to see is a better tutorial, better tooltips teaching you how to play the game. But to be honest, I think a lot of games in this genre are pretty rough, pretty tough to learn and play, but at least the information is generally there and findable. There's nice notification trackers. The dashboard is good at keeping you up to date on everything that you're doing. You get the messages that come in pretty well. Everything has worked for me so far. I've done a couple hours of testing and I haven't run into any major bugs yet, so that's a good sign. The tooltips on things could definitely do with being a little bit better. UI scaling would be nice, and we can see, in fact, look at all this. We can actually track specific resources. That's pretty cool. This is impressive. Honestly, I didn't expect it to be in this functional of a state so early in its early access development. So that is a good thing. Oh yes, here's an example of a battle winning, by the way, where we have like way more power than them. So it starts like flashing green here, showing the different divisions of military. You see the AI is sending forward some of the divisions. I believe this is the one that I specially deployed, and these were the ones that were next to it, in fact. That's cute. You see Mexico sending theirs. Our aircraft are on certain missions. They have different missions: bombing cities, search and destroy, indiscriminate bombing. You could have them train, close air support, air superiority. So you can micro all of that. You can just let the AI handle a lot of it. You can even let the, I forgot to mention this, the AI can handle setting up trades for you within price tolerances that you set per industry, which is helpful. There's also some other stuff there for intelligence and etc. that they seem to be adding in the future. It's listed as soon right now. But I think I've rambled long enough and shown enough for one day. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. For now, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.